Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to the Pond Hunter broadcast from the Under the Sea radio show on Blog Talk Radio. The Pond Hunter, in the pursuit of all things aquatic. Take a look into the world of koi ponds, water gardens, and the lifestyles of the aquatically obsessed. Meet the pros, hobbyists, and cover some no-nonsense pond advice straight from the field. The Pond Hunter, in the pursuit of all things aquatic. Here's your host, koi pond and water garden expert, Mike Gannon.
Hey, everybody. Hey, how's everybody doing? Right on. In the pursuit of all things aquatic, people, the Pond Hunter, aquatically obsessed. I'm your host, Mike Gannon. Thanks for tuning in, and I appreciate you all being here. Pond Hunter Radio Broadcast is coming to you from Blog Talk Radio, broadcasting around the world. Even though I'm really just sitting in my mom's basement doing this show while I do laundry. Just kidding, folks. I'm not doing laundry. So, welcome everybody for another episode of the Pond Hunter Radio Broadcast. This is episode 15 coming at you with some good stuff coming your way, and I'm happy you could all make it. Stick around. My guest tonight is calling in from England. Yes, from across the biggest pond of them all. And I appreciate him calling in the early morning hours since he's about 5 hours ahead of me here in the Northeast United States. Mark M.J. Wilson is coming on tonight, everybody. And Mark is a friend of mine. His company over there in England is Any Pond Limited. For more local regions, it's Any Pond Northants is how you can find him on Facebook. And Mark is a pond and water garden professional from England. He is an expert with aquatic plants. He is a certified aquascape contractor, and I'm sure he will have some great advice on prepping our plants for those tough winter months. And we're going to talk a bit about some of the differences and similarities in pond keeping, American style versus English style. And Mark is a great guy. He's a smart pond professional with knowledge and experience he's going to be sharing with us tonight, all the way from jolly old England. And I'm going to see if he can tell me whether the royal family has any ponds that they keep. So stay tuned for Mark M.J. Wilson from Any Pond Limited coming right up. The enjoyment of water features, ponds, water gardens is in no way a localized pastime. It's a global human interest and passion and lifestyle, and always has been. It's interesting how there can be different styles to how people approach ponds and water gardens. That is a localized approach. How ponds and water gardens are approached and what people expect from them does indeed vary from place to place, even though the end result is still a pond or a water garden. What Mr. Jones from Texas expects and desires from his pond is going to be pretty different from what Mr. Baker expects and desires in his pond over in England, or what Mr. Hanako desires and expects from his pond over in Japan. At the end of the day, they're all ponds, but what we expect from them and how we go about it will be different. And what we find acceptable, others may not. And, of course, what others find acceptable, he may not, for the American pond keeper. So tonight we're going to try and explore and talk about some of those differences with my guest, Mark M.J. Wilson. Mark is the owner of Any Pond Limited. Any Pond Limited is a pond, water garden, and water feature design, install, and service company out of England. And Mark has some great perspective on this, being a pond professional over in England with many years of experience with the quote-unquote English way of doing ponds, and he has spent a good deal of time here in the U.S. seeing and visiting many American-style ponds, and even helping to build a few of them. He's also a real expert on aquatic plants for water gardening, and is going to give us some tips on preparing our water garden plants for those tough winter months we'll be heading into soon. And he's doing a lot to help change the way England approaches water gardening and pond keeping, almost single-handedly. Mark is a friend of mine. I'm very happy to have him here on the show tonight, calling all the way in from England. Hey, Mark, are you on the line?
Hey, Mike, how you doing?
Hey,
can you hear
good,
me?
Mark. How are you? I can hear you.
Yeah, very
just
good.
Fine. How are you?
So there again. Yeah, very, very good. It's very early in the morning. It's about 20 to 2 in the morning at the moment.
Well, good morning to you.
Yeah, I've been listening to the show. It's been great.
Good. Thank you very much. And I'm so glad you're calling in. How's business over there in England?
Yeah, it's very, very good. As you know, I'm a very small team, so we're very limited on what we can actually do and achieve. So, it's business is booming at the moment. It's we need more help, which is great.
That's very good news. And I got to see you this summer at the Pandemonium event that you came overseas for. What did you think of Pandemonium this year?
Yeah, it was great. It was a really good event. Seeing lots of people that I met last year, and then obviously in March. It was building a lot more relationships with the contractors that I've seen and been talking to on Facebook. Facebook is a marvelous new technology for me in the last few years, and it's been great. So. Networking face to face is brilliant, and obviously on Facebook and the internet, it's okay. But when you're face to face with someone, you can get their reactions, which is much, much better, and you can see that you're alike as well, which is great. Yeah,
it's an incredible tool. And through Facebook, I saw that you stuck around in the States for a while after the Pandemonium event. You stuck around for a while. What were you up to doing? What were you doing?
Yeah, I basically, obviously coming over from England, it's it's a bit of a trek over, and it takes me about 3 days to acclimatise, with the jet lag and everything. So I stayed on afterwards to basically shadow a few of the Aquascape staff, work with their construction crew. Because we work completely different, or the practices are different anyway. The machines are different, the ball carts and the dingos. We don't have any of those over here. We have small pallet trucks and big excavators or skid steers, and you can't really get them into the back gardens over here because of access problems. So just basically. Shadowing some of the Aquascape staff. I actually worked in the warehouse for a couple of hours, folding liners up and hanging out with some of the Mexicans, and had lunch with them. And they're very big on their food and their family, and it was great just to see the different culture shocks. I like interacting with different people. And I don't even have to speak their language, but we can communicate. So it was just good fun and then I hung out, sort of like the tail end of the week at Aqualand, enjoying it, and then obviously the fly back home. So it was good fun.
Yeah, that's cool. And now you're back in England, and you're probably. I know that England shares many of the same hardiness zones as the U.S., and I think even where I'm in New Jersey, and where my company is getting ready to actually start our koi pond and water garden. Winter preparation services. Do you do any of those type of services for your customers?
Yeah, we do. We do a lot of obviously the plant husbandry, and certainly it's a case of putting nets over. We don't actually shut down any ponds. It doesn't get that cold. It's about a zone 7 or a zone 8. So most of the ponds, that they stay active all the time. All the pumps are on 24 hours, 365 days a year. You may get the odd, few days when it goes down really cold, but then you can just switch them back on again, no problem at all. So we don't really shut them down like you guys do. But certainly it's a case of we're going out netting leaves and doing all the autumn maintenance.
Yeah, cool. I think, we're doing a comparison of different techniques and styles, England over in America, but we have a caller waiting on the line. Let's take a quick phone call and then let's jump into our topics. How does that sound?
That'd be great.
Cool.
Yeah, definitely.
Let's see who we got. They were waiting for a little while. I hope they're still there on the line. Hey, caller, are you on the line?
Hi, this is International Water Features, Jerry. How are you?
Jerry!
How's Jerry?
Jerry.
How are you, Mark? How are you guys?
I'm very good. Yourself?
Shut the front door.
Shut the front door and open the back, because I want to run.
Holy Christmas.
And you too.
How are you, Jerry?
Good?
Thanks for calling in.
Doing great. Crazy busy here in the States, and looking forward to heading back to Ireland there in the coming weeks to meet up with Mark and his neck of the woods.
Yeah, it should be great. We've just seen some pictures of your fantastic pond that you've just finished recently. They look amazing.
Oh my God, the homeowner's so excited, absolutely over the frickin' moon. We just put the lights in there today. We got the lights going today. We're going to go back and put a few more lights in, but that job is all but done. We're starting another big project on on Friday. We're getting rain tomorrow, so we won't do nothing tomorrow.
Fantastic.
Yeah, you've been doing some amazing work, Jerry. I love following your stuff on Facebook. I'm a big fan of yours. I love your work, and I always look forward to all your different posts. It's really great stuff. Great work, great ponds, and just a great personality you and your company have.
Thank you.
We're not too far away from each other. We're about 45 minutes away from each other, and you must be getting ready to help winterize some ponds for your customers as well.
Yes. The leaves are starting to fall. Not too, you can tell they're starting. The colours are starting to change. But I'd say by the end of October, or halfway into October, we'll start doing that. But I'm still building. I have a lot of building. I'm backed up for this year and well into next year with install. So it's been a very strange year.
Yeah, well, that's a good problem to have, I guess, if you want to even call it a problem.
Oh yeah, no, it's not a problem. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and you make it a lot of fun. It's all how you approach things. If you can make it fun, it's going to be fun, and I think that translates through to your customers as well. So they, as you say, they must be over the moon with the projects that they're getting out of you.
Oh God, I tell you what, you have to see it in real life. When you see it in real life, because everybody has a pond, and then somebody comes in and turns it upside down and makes it new and bigger and blah blah blah. And this particular guy is a landscaper himself, and he's just. I mean, I just can't tell you how happy he is. It's a great thing to make another landscaper happier than he's happier than me, and I think I'm the happiest guy in the world.
Yeah, your passion is great. Your passion on the videos is great, yeah.
Awesome. Well, it's lovely hearing you guys. Your show sounds great. I've never been on a show before or a radio station, so it's a whole new experience again.
I appreciate you phoning in.
It's beautiful to hear you there, guys, and happy days. And I'll stay listening and let you get back to your, because you're talking better talk than I am.
All right, Jerry. Thank you so much for calling in. Appreciate it.
Cheers, Jerry. See you soon.
We'll catch up with you soon.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay. Take good care. Yep, that's Jerry. Jerry's great. Don't you love Jerry, Mark? He's a great guy.
Yeah, he's fantastic. He's a great guy, and appreciate him phoning in, because obviously in the UK everyone's asleep at the moment, so it's a bit of a tough one to get anyone to phone in from the UK. But they're going to listen to the on-demand podcast and stuff. I know a lot of people that will listen to the show after, which is great. So definitely good.
Yeah, you can hear it anytime. So so we were talking about services now. And it's interesting to say you don't really shut down your ponds. I actually, in the New Jersey area, we really don't shut down ponds either, for the most part. Where most of our customers leave their ponds running all year round. I always tell them in extreme circumstances, you got to check on it, of course, extreme conditions. Yeah. But services is a good place to look at some of the differences in pond keeping approaches when, I'm just going to refer to it as English style versus American style. What type of services do you offer your customers? What type of seasonal services is a pond company over in England giving to their pond customers?
Well, it's down to the style really on the pond, because a lot of the ponds are geared up to regular maintenance. So, we do have a few monthly customers, but we're trying to move over to, to less maintenance ponds. So we're going out sort of like twice a year, so it's spring and the autumn, because some of our clients can be an hour or an hour and a half away, and if we only have to do a 10-minute job, it gets very expensive for sort of 10 minutes on site. So we do provide the monthly service, but we're trying to come away from that sort of service. But certainly as a typical, we like to, obviously do the spring startups, treating for all of the blanket weed issues, or changing UVs if they've got a heavy fish load, and basically just tidying up in the spring. And then obviously in the autumn as well, if people need it. A lot of people do, a certain amount of pond care themselves, because a lot of people enjoy it as well. So we provide a number of different services. We typically recommend, if they're looking for a pond professional, then definitely having some help in the spring is a good idea. And then one-offs if they need it. And then the next service is spring and autumn, and then obviously quarterly, then the monthly service. That's what we sort of like offer. But we try and steer away from the monthly maintenances, because it's one of those. If the pond needs regular maintenance, then the homeowner really needs to know how to do the stuff themselves, because it could be a case of we're extremely busy. Like I was saying, we're only a small, a couple of guy team, and it's very hard to get round to everybody. So we try and educate the customers. This is how you do it. It's very simple. If you have any problems, or if you're not sure how to do something, we're on the end of a phone, we can come out and do a pond consultation, or whatever you.
So you will teach your customers to be a little more hands-on with their ponds. You want them to have a better understanding of how everything works, so they can do those small types of services.
Yeah, it all depends on the load on the system. Typically, I've found over in England that there's a lot more fish in the systems than there are, in the ponds that I've seen in the States. They haven't got the same amount of fish, the load on the system. So it's almost like an intensive care, unit. So if you've got a lot of fish in the pond, then, you can have a problem go down within a few hours even. It's that balance that needs to be created. And a lot of people want to keep more fish, so it's out of balance. So they need to understand that this is what they need to do, or they need to have aeration, or they need to, they need to be, as what we call it, is the intensive care system, or life support machine, and they need to know how to look after it just in case something goes wrong, or a power cut or something. And that's what I really like about the ecosystem ponds. It's really dropped out. It was really big in the 70s and 80s, but certainly it's a case of over here the balance of the most ponds in the UK are overstocked, so the balance isn't there. Certainly it's a case of there's a lot of wildlife ponds. Back in the sort of like the 80s and 90s, wildlife ponds are really up there, and there was no filtrate fish with only a small amount of fish. As soon as I say to people, you can put fish in it, and they say, oh yeah, can we put some fish in? And then they say, oh, can we feed them? And I say, well, if you're starting to feed them every day, then you need to have a filter system to look after the waste. Otherwise, you'll have all sorts of problems, and then the fish will die from water quality issues and stuff. So, as soon as I say you can have fish, people go, oh, great. We'll put in a load of fish, which is, it tips the balance, especially when they put small ones in and they grow without the adequate filtration and stuff. So
that's an interesting observation, because I feel like the American pond tends to be a little overstocked. I know, according to the rules, so to speak, that my pond certainly would be overstocked. That's interesting to see that you're saying that over in England people are even more overstocked than how Americans are doing it.
Yeah, it's all rule of thumb. The way I look at it is, it's a case of, it depends on how much work you want to do. It's like, if let's say you had cats or dogs. if you wanted to spend a lot of time looking after 10 dogs, that's not a problem. But it's going to be virtually a full-time job. Where if you have one or two dogs, it's not too much work. So you can have lots of fish in a small pond, but it's a lot of work, and some people are happy doing it, some people aren't. So we do a sort of like a fish rehoming service, but certainly, ecosystem ponds, the sterile, the sort of like the koi, the typical koi pond over here is very sterile. As soon as the fish defecates, it's out of the system, backwashed out of the system, heavy big water changes to take out the hormone, to stop the hormone building up so the fish can grow and everything. But they're a lot of the koi keepers, they do daily backwashing, 10, 15%, and then have a sort of like a trickle method to continually top the pond up and everything. But certainly it's a case of, like you say, it's a case of, most ponds are overstocked, and they can take quite a lot of abuse. Obviously, that there's some ponds that haven't been touched for years and years and years, and the fish get used to the environment they're in. I say to some of my customers, it's a case of, the fish will adapt to the conditions that they're in. It's like an alcoholic can wean its way, can wean onto taking large amounts of alcohol, and then obviously you can't, you're going to have problems if you go cold turkey, and it's exactly the same with water quality. That's the sort of like the connection that I can make, if the water quality is gradually getting worse and worse and worse, and then all of a sudden you take that fish out of, almost bad toxic conditions and then put it into sterile conditions, it won't be able to cope. It'll get stressed out. It might be too bright or it might be too clear. And the fish will get stressed out, and it's exactly the same the other way around. If you've got a real fit prime show grade koi that's been in a sterile system, and you put it into an ecosystem pond that's got a lot more going on, then it might not be able to cope because the bacteria infections and stuff that the fish's immune system isn't built up, and it's really quite tough to educate the customers because it's such a broad rule of thumb. There's so much information out there, and there's not just one way of doing it. There's lots and lots of ways of it all depends on what you want. Whether you want a wildlife pond, a prize koi pond, a goldfish pond. It depends again how much maintenance you want to do. Like we were saying before.
Right. Let's talk about the actual the type of ponds. But right before we get to that, let's take another call. You got another caller who would like to say hello to you. So before we get to the ponds, let's see if we can get this caller on the line to say hello. Caller, you're on the air. Hey, caller, hello. Are you there? Yes. Who are we speaking with?
This is Benjamin.
Hey, Benjamin. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. I've got plenty of
Pond Hunter.
Hey, Mike. This is Benjamin with Liquid Landscapes.
Hey, Benjamin Timmerman. How are you?
Good. My first question would be, Mark, have you had enough coffee?
Yes, and I found Mountain Dew as well, so there's lots of caffeine in that. I was introduced to Mountain Dew over in Chicago, just at Pandemonium, and I found it today, so I've got plenty of caffeine in the Mountain Dew.
Well, I guess the only question I really got, and in regards to pond construction in Europe and pond construction in America, is, I know in Europe ponds have been around a lot longer, and some of the methodologies are a little bit different. But what have you taken from the United States and what you've seen here with your training over here? What have you taken back from here to over there?
I think a lot of it is the state ponds they're works of art, and it's very much a case of the whole ecosystem, as in it's the rocks, it's the piece of art. It's not all about just the fish. It's not necessarily a swimming pool with fish in. So you don't have to have airliner. You don't have to have pumps showing on the bottom of the pond. It can look fantastic, and it can look like a mountainside. rather than a swimming pool with fish swimming around. I think I certainly think back in the 70s and 80s when you had a lot more balanced wildlife ponds, then they were balanced. So they did look really good. I've got a few clients, and obviously I'm educating my clients slowly. But certainly it's a case of it's getting away from the bare liner, the pumps on the bottom, the plumbing on show. I don't want to see a lot of that stuff. And certainly the first time I came out to Pondemonium, when I didn't see all the systems, with the skimmers, I hadn't seen any decent pond skimmers. They were all out of the swimming pool industry, and they were, had certain problems with those. So it's just the overall look of the general system, which has been fantastic for me because, water plants is my background. The ponds is everything. It's not just about the fish. If I want to keep big fish, I've got a pond at home. I'm sat right by it now. It's 2.5 meters deep because it's got some big koi in there, over 3 foot long. But certainly it's a case of they need different conditions to they don't want to live in a work of art. They want to live in a sterile environment. These are prize fish. So yeah, it's great.
Well, I guess another question I would have is obviously over here we're dealing with a lot of rock and gravel ponds and ecosystem type ponds, and a select true dedicated koi ponds and concrete stuff. But a majority of what you guys are seeing over there, what kind of old construction are you seeing?
There's a lot of concrete ponds because you can't change them. There's a lot of concrete ponds. We don't have the real severe weather. So as long as it's built right, and a lot of the ponds that I see are very over-engineered, they're going to last a long, long time. So we see a lot of concrete ponds, and again, we see a lot of bare liner pools. It's a case of with that pearl necklace around the top, the coping stones, and then all of a sudden it's a case of a lot of people, but they like to build them themselves. Their starter ponds. They have a certain amount of money as a budget, and they go to the local aquatic centre. We've got a lot of good aquatic centres in the UK, but they all tend to sell components rather than a complete system. This is the system that you're allowed, or this is the system that you're allowed this amount of fish. It's all about the size of the pond. It's not about the occupancy in the pond and everything. So, there is a lot of education that needs to be done as well. But yeah, the typical ponds that we see are, it's a mixture of, bare liner, goldfish pools, all the way up to the big koi ponds that are, like swimming pools in different shapes and sizes.
Excellent. Well, you guys are two professionals in the industry, and I can't thank you for taking my call. And it's a great show, Mike, and great to hear your voice, Mark. And you guys are doing a great thing for our industry. We need more stuff like this.
Hey, thanks, Ben. Thanks so much for calling in.
All righty. Well, you guys have a good evening.
Yeah, and you. Well, morning. I'm gonna have my cornflakes in a minute.
All right. Have a good day.
Cheers.
Have a good night.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. So you're saying there's still a lot of concrete out there. Ponds are still being, would you say, primarily constructed with concrete, even at this point, as opposed to using EPDM liners like we are using over here?
It all depends. There's a lot of aquatic centres that sell the real thin PVC and the real thin EPDM. So I think a lot of it depends on what people, what's available to the people. They don't tend to ring a pond professional. A lot of people don't realise that there's pond professionals out there. That they just ring up a landscaper. We do ponds, and they just go to the local and just install the components. And we but certainly it's a case of that. We see a lot of concrete ponds because normally they've got a certain amount of issues with them. So and they can't be changed. Once that it's set in stone, it's set in concrete. So it's like my
right.
pond in my back garden. I my koi pond. I built it in 2005. There's 720 blocks. It's a real big structural. It's very, very hard to change. Where obviously with the EPDM and stuff like that, it's. I think a lot of it is all to do with the depth of ponds. If you're looking at keeping big koi, then there's a tremendous amount of pressure on the base.
Right.
So that's why you have to set it in real big, lots of concrete and stuff, so it doesn't move at all. But yeah, I would say if it was a numbers thing, then it would be probably PVC or thin EPDM. But certainly 1 mil rubber or 0.45 mil is it? Over in America, it's becoming more popular. That's all we use. There's a lot of different pond liner materials out in the market in the UK, but some are very thin and they're terrible. But they are cheap and cheerful. For a small pond, it's great. Yeah. But certainly it's a case of. There is a lot of EPDM. There's some real good manufacturers over in the UK. I think they're the same. Firestone is a manufacturer. Supplying the 1 mil rubber. That's what we don't put any concrete ponds in. There's a lot of concrete ponds, but because of that there's a certain amount of problems. With it, in my head, there's only two types of concrete: cracked concrete and concrete that will crack eventually.
Right.
So we use EPDM. Whenever we're building a pond, it's always the 1 mil rubber.
Yeah. Now I haven't been over to England, unfortunately. I intend to make it there one of these days. But
definitely.
What I'm told is the typical size pond. In England or over in Europe is much smaller than the American pond. Americans like it big and bigger and bigger. Do you find that to be true in what you've seen?
Yes.
Yeah, so
certainly. A lot of my clients have big ponds. But certainly as a typical, general rule, 6x4. There's a lot of preform pools that are being sold. Not that we install them, but certainly as we've got lots smaller gardens. I think all the backyards are smaller, so we haven't got the space. There's a lot of people, and the gardens are very, very small. We've got a lot of green belt, which is the sort of like the rural areas, the farmland. So that the big ponds tend to be natural clay liner, or the bentonite clay ponds. Yeah. But certainly as a general, lots of small ones for hobbyists. It's 6x4. All the way up to sort of like 10 foot, which is still tiny in comparison with you guys. But certainly, there's a lot of ponds, up to sort of like 10, 12 feet.
Yeah. And it's funny because kind of as a builder, when I'm going and making sales calls and trying to educate people on building ponds and how they should go about doing it, I would even say a 10 by 10 pond is small. I'll tell people, I'll say it's a small pond. So it's almost the kind of the perception that you give to your customers as well. And we do ponds of all sizes. We'll do 4 foot by 6 foot ponds. So we'll do considerably smaller. But it's kind of what you teach your customers in a way, because they do look to us. They know what they want. They just don't necessarily know how to go about doing it.
That's right. It's prizing out what they want. If they want to keep koi, then they need to have a big pond. If they want the smaller fish, then a small pond, no problem. Even a barrel. It's great for a patio pond. We don't do so many of those because, but certainly you can have fish in a small barrel on the patio, no problem at all. Yeah.
And it's interesting you mentioned, too, as far as how you go about filtering ponds over there. You made the comment that it's mostly component systems over there in England right now, whereas here in the United States, we have many, many different types of systems that we can install. There's all these different brand systems that we can install. And depending on what brand you use, of course, is what you're going to sell to people. But you're saying that there's a lot of components and systems like the Aquascape filtration system really broken into the market over there just yet. So when they're filtering ponds, what would be a typical system that is being installed on a pond over in England? What are the components that people are utilizing?
A lot of it is, it's basically box filters. It's basically a case of the pump
like gravity
pumps the water
filters?
up. Say again?
Like a gravity filter, a box filter?
No, it's like a box filter. It's like a heating system tank that basically water gets pumped into, and then it flows back into the pond, via gravity. So it's just literally like a black box with a certain amount of filter media in, and so it's basically a case of there's a lot of misleading guidelines and stuff. The education is something that I really it can be a lot easier. Talking to a pond professional, it's very easy because we just go, this is what you need. We've done it 100 times or 1 million times. This is what you need, for your situation, and it's always the trying to get that situation. What do you want as a pond? Do you want, it's getting that. So it's mainly small box filters, but most of the time it's a case of we get called out. The pond's dirty, and it's always the filter system. It's not big enough, so it's an overload on the system, or the fish have grown. But certainly all the different components. It's there's no, sort of like there are kits. Don't get me wrong. Like a pump and filter combination. But certainly it's a case of there's no system, like the Aquascape system that we try. I think it hasn't broken into it because of the, just from the shipping point of view. Shipping stuff in, it's expensive. But certainly, the components and everything over here, it's it's basically a case of there's a lot of guesswork. There's definitely no pond kits out there, so you can't go into an aquatic store or a DIY store and buy a pond kit. So from a pond professional point of view, I'm always encouraging, my aquatic sender, can you sort me out pond A, pond B, pond D, pond C? So it's very easy for me to install. So I know exactly that I'm going to go in there, pick the pond kit up that they've selected for me, because sometimes it can take, I want this pump, this pipe, this filter, and you can be in the aquatic store for 2 hours, picking bits up, and rather than just phoning the aquatic store up and saying, can I have a pond A kit, and then it all comes in. But you're basically going around selecting components from the aquatic centre, because there's no packages, and I think that's one thing that I learned. Not this Pondemonium, but the Pondemonium before is look at the packages. So it's basically categorising it. So it's basically a case of, and selling, then the customer knows what they're going to buy. It's like if you want to go and buy a TV, you set yourself a budget and you think, right, I'm going to have £1,000 or $1,000 TV, a real good TV. You never go into the television centre and say, I want a TV. And then the TV says, well, what do you want? Blah, blah, blah. And it's a case of you set yourself a budget. This is how much I can afford. What can I get for that money? Where it's a backwards way. So it's very much a case of, I want a pond, but they might have £1,000 budget for a pond, and they want, an Olympic swimming pool. Right. They just don't know how much, the package is. So it's basically the packaging of the system. It could be, this is the £1,000, pond package, and then people can see what they can have for £1,000 or $1,000, or not that you're going to get very much for $1,000, £600 or so, But certainly it's the case of, having a package, and it's all about the design. We're always, here in this company, we're looking at the package, and, we're thinking about the design to it. We're looking at the efficiency, because we're only a small crew. Then we've got to go in there, we've got to be very, very efficient. So selecting pond components for 2 hours is not efficient at all.
No,
it's okay.
Not at all.
It's okay if you're building a pond over the weekend, but when you're looking to build 5 ponds in a week or what have you, it's really tough. Not that we build 5 ponds in a week, because we're not big enough for that, but certainly it's the case of that's where I want to get to. That's where I want to get to the point. Building 5 small ponds a week, or one project. It depends on the size of the pond and what have you.
Sure.
Yeah.
The American filtration systems, I think, are much more streamlined. And one of the ways that I use Facebook, which again is a great tool, is I'm connected with pond builders all over the world, and I love seeing how they put together their ponds. And I see everything from some very low-tech ponds, like, for example, over in Malaysia, Philippines, over in those areas, they go very low-tech on their filtration. And some of the most complex that I see are definitely over in England and over in Europe.
Yeah, we love the gadgets and whistles.
Oh yeah, and
we love the
gadgets. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, the German technology it's all gadgets and whistles. You've got conveyor belts and drum filters, and I think a lot of it is
whistles and bells. And
I think a lot of it is designed for a small footprint, as in a case of, if you haven't got very much space. What we're looking at is we're looking at low maintenance ponds, because we can't get round and do daily backwashes or weekly servicing. We're looking at systems that will look after themselves for at least a month or even 6 months. So putting on big wetland filtration systems and stuff, it's great. But certainly if you're limited for space, and you need something compact, but it needs to be cleaned out regularly. And this is what I say to the customers. I say, if you want a pressure filter, a small canister filter, it needs backwashing regularly, or it doesn't work, or it warps inside, or whatever. It'll only hold a certain amount of waste. You're not going to get 5 kilos of waste in a canister filter, where in a wetland filter you could have 50 kilos of waste, on the right size wetland filtration system. So you don't have to clean it out. You clean it out once a year. And as soon as I say that to some of my clients, they're like, yeah, this is great. I don't want to be cleaning my filter system out every week or every month or what have you. I want to be sat, at the end of the day, I want to be sat with a glass of wine enjoying my pond, rather than having to clean the pond. It becomes more of a chore. And that's what I'm trying to, to promote. You don't have to, ponds can be low maintenance. And I think the general in the UK, the ponds are hard work. They're not hard work. As long as you get the design right. It's like if you go to a restaurant, the way I see pond professionals, they're like chefs. If it's basically, you don't blame the food for being, you blame the chef, in a restaurant. And it's that design, designing the plate of food. Someone wouldn't blame the food, but I'm getting mixed up. But certainly you can understand what I'm saying. Is people don't shout at about the design of the ponds. They just think the pond is hard work.
Yeah. And low maintenance is a very, very common theme among American customers. I mean, that's something that, no matter what people want or think they want, even though they may not know exactly what they want, they do always express, I want low maintenance, or they say, I want no maintenance. And I always tell everybody, there's no such thing as no maintenance, but low maintenance you can certainly have. And and you have to pay for it. The less expensive systems, like the canisters and those types of filter systems, that you pay less, but you have to work a lot more on your pond. Yeah. You pay a little bit more, you get to relax and have that glass of wine sitting by the pond. So
that's right.
It's really,
and that's what I really like about aquascape is it's about the lifestyle. It's not about cleaning the filter system. It's all about the balanced ecosystem. And those sort of ponds can take quite a bit of waste. It's like a lot of people, say to me, "Oh, don't put any rocks and gravel in the pond." But it's all about the load and the system. The rocks and the gravel is fantastic. But if you put too many fish in, it just gets filled up, and then it's a real nightmare to clean the rocks and the gravel. But with the right load, it's perfect. It's very low maintenance. Mother Nature will work for you rather than working against her. She will look after the pond. She will eat the waste, and But it's all about the load. It's all about the education. A lot of people, they jump up and down, and they say, "No, this is the way you've got to do it." And it's like, no, there's a number of ways.
Right. Now, so we're talking about filtration, which of course which is how you're going to control your water quality. And I've been told that water quality to many European or pond keepers over in England is of course important. However, a lot of most pond keepers don't really mind having a little bit of green water or a little bit of murkiness to their pond. Whereas the American pond keeper, they do not want green water. They want it nice and clear all the time. Is that true that over in England, a little bit of green water, a little murkiness is acceptable?
No. Certainly, it's a case of it's yes and no. That the koi people, they want a clear pond. Where they're sort of like the ecosystem people that are it's a water garden. They don't mind a bit of green water in the spring. It's basically that single cell algae is the first to break its dormancy. So wildlife ponds, they will tend to go a slight greeny colour in the spring. The amount of times when I get a call in the spring, I've got a wildlife pond that's gone green. And I say as soon as the plants get going, they're going to use that nutrients up, and they'll soon start out competing the algae for. So yes and no. They can be, that they do. There's a lot of people that jump up and down, but they do tolerate it more. I've got customers or clients that are contacting me. I've had a murky pond for 3 or 4 years or 5 years, and I'm like, really? And they're like, yeah, I've not, my system's not, and then they say, you look between the lines and it's all against, it's about the load and it's not got the adequate filtration. I was saying, it's a case of filters are sold for the size of the pond, not the occupants in it, which is, which is something that I have to really educate the people. It's like you can have 10 dogs in a kennel and you have to clean them up, clean the waste, but you can have them in a great big field and you wouldn't have to clean up after them because of, Mother Nature will take care of it. It's all about the balance.
Right. And a lot of people do get confused by that. They'll see a small filter that, for me personally, I look at some of these filters that customers have hooked up to the ponds, and it's the kind of filter, like a canister filter, that I would use on a fish tank, maybe like a 90-gallon fish tank, and they have it hooked up to their 500-gallon pond. And I'm like, there's just no way. There's no way you're going to get good results out of this. So
unless you're cleaning it on a daily basis or an hourly basis, and not that you're going to get the biological load, colonizing in there, but certainly it's a case of, it's going back to that regular maintenance. That's where the manufacturers can get away with the size of the pond. You can do it, but you've got to clean the pond. If they put it in small print, you've got to clean the system out, very, very regularly, daily or weekly. People wouldn't buy the systems. It's blah blah blah, isn't it? It's all about it's all about the load.
And then they have green water, which again to the American customer is just completely unacceptable because they can't see their fish. Now, when it comes to fish, there's got to be you have to have seen some differences in the types of fish that are kept over in England versus kept over here in America. For example, I know koi are popular everywhere. America was really greatly influenced in their interest in koi by the United Kingdom. The British Koi Keeper Society That was one of the earliest non-Japanese koi clubs. Yeah, I mean, in the world. It was, I think, one of the first outside of Japan to actually celebrate koi and start educating people on koi. And of course, America
there's lots of information about koi,
as well as the Shibunkin, the Bristol Shibunkin Society.
Yeah, that's my favorite. One of my favorite fish at the moment is the poor man's koi, as we like to call it. And they don't get too big, which is great. I've got some customers that have got like them 10 inches long, and they're sort of like 30 years old, and they're fantastic. I love those little Shibunkins. They're great.
Yeah, they really are. They're beautiful fish, and they were so popular over there that there's actually a variety of Shibunkin called the Bristol Shibunkin. Is that correct? Yeah,
and also there's the London Shibunkin, and there's actually Shibunkin classes in goldfish shows and stuff over here. It's the tail's got to be a perfect heart shape. It's crazy. You can go real deep. One of my customers, she breeds Bristol and London Shibunkins. The London is the white one, and the Bristol is the blue one.
Okay. I have two Shibunkin in my pond, and I believe I must have a Bristol and I must have a London. I don't know the difference personally by just looking at them, but what you just described are the two different varieties that I have. I love them too.
Yeah,
I think they're
I think it's a lot of it is a common, it's a common name, blah blah blah. It's like the common names that there's lots of different common names, but certainly that's what I. The white Shibunkins are London and the Bristol. Going back to the 70s, the books that are out in the fancy goldfish, all those sort of societies and stuff. So yeah.
Yeah. Now, what about? I see that sturgeon is kept over in England, over in Ireland too. I see sturgeon.
Yeah, we got lots of different sterlets and diamondbacks, and all sorts of different sturgeon, and I think a lot of people they want something different. Certainly it's a case of there are a few more complications when you do go down the sterlet route. From a water treatment, and if you do have problems with your fish, then I know sterlets can be a bit more delicate. I don't know. Do you have tench in the US?
They're not that popular. You can find them over here, but it's not a popular fish.
Yeah, we have a lot of most aquatic stores sell tench, green tench and golden tench. And they call them the doctor fish. I don't know if they're called the doctor fish in the States as well.
They're just referred to as tench, and really the only ones that I've seen, and again I don't see them around that often, are the gold tench. I have not seen the green tench come to market out here.
Yeah, and also there's a few koi tench as well. I don't know how popular they're going to be, but I've certainly seen a few. With a bluish tinge, and I've seen a few that, they're not perfect Go Sankey varieties, as in the white fish with the red and black markings, but certainly there's, multicolored tench that are coming out. I think it's, breeding with the golden tench. There's that real clear, carrot golden tench, and then there's golden tench with a few black spots, and then obviously there are a few koi tench, but I've got a few customers that have got some blue tench, which are nice, and of course the weather loach as well. I remember you posting an article about the weather loach. I've got some customers with some massive, great big weather loach. When I say massive, they're only sort of 6 inches long, but they're massive for weather loach.
Yeah. Which I'm going to be looking at putting a couple. I was just talking about that today to a friend of mine. I'm going to look at putting a couple of those into my pond once I come across them. There's not a big.
Kept them in aquarium at home, and they're great escape artists. My wife's frightened of the weather loach in my kitchen aquarium. They keep jumping out, but they're as hardy as anything. I'll put them back in 4 or 5 times, and they can be real crisp. And we've literally got cups over there where we've got a tiny little feeding hole, and if you don't put the cup back on the feeding hole, it will come right out of the tank. It's it's great. They've got so much character. All the fish have got their own personalities, but certainly weatherloach, they've got a character to their own. They're great.
Yeah.
So
now,
do you have rudd? Do you have rudd as well? Golden rudd, or have you heard of rudd?
No, not that I'm aware of. Not that I've seen personally. It could be out there, but not that I see in these markets.
Yeah, that's what we would recommend in a wildlife pond, with no filtration. So it's just literally a case of it's like a water garden or a wildlife pond. Then we would introduce golden rudd. They're a surface feeding fish. The mouth's actually turned upwards. That they're and also there's another coarse fish that are in the rivers called a roach. But they're very shoaling fish, but they're silver. In the wildlife ponds, then rudd and roach are really good, and you can get the golden rudd. They're very popular in wildlife, native wildlife. We don't have any bass in the UK. We don't have any turtles. Back in the 90s with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, it became illegal to bring them in. But certainly there are a few in the aquarium trade that are, I know that the first episode of the Pond Stars is a turtle pond, so I'm looking a bit more, if it's changed. But certainly I think that there are a few turtles that are coming in that can be climatized where it's through the aquarium. But we don't have any, obviously, turtles or salamanders even. We have a lot of newts. We have great crested newts that are a protected species, and they're so protected if you can have a £5,000 fine for picking them up, or wow. You can actually you can actually be put in prison. If you hold, if you keep them or disturb them, they're so highly protected. I don't know who polices it. It's British Nature, or, but certainly it's a case of there are native species that are very highly protected, and we see a fair amount of them. We've got a few clients that have got great crested newts, and we can do routine maintenance. But if we want to add fish, or if we want to alter the system, or do some construction, then we have to get a license to. So it's all about the newts. It's great. I love. They're fascinating.
I think it would be very embarrassing to go to prison because of a newt. You think? I'd want a charge that's a little tougher than that.
Yeah, I'm petrified because I would have thought that if that they would use me as an example. Pond contractor put into prison for 3 days or 5 days because of doing a routine maintenance. So I always phone them up, and we try and avoid getting the licenses because we can do routine maintenance now because all the newts are in there. They're coming out of the pond. So from now on. This is when we sort of tend to do the sort of like the natural pond routine maintenance, where there's a lot of great crested newts because they're out of the pond, so you can do pretty much. But we can't put fish in because the fish outcompete the newt for food, and also you can't put pumps because obviously the pumps can be powerful and disturb the newts when they come back in to breed. So. It's a tough one. Not like I say, who polices it? But they are protected really, really, really strongly.
Yeah,
I think they're more. I think it's more of a case of they're endangered in certain places, and in other certain places they're very localized. But certainly I understand that from the biosecurity point of view, moving them around, and if people start to meddle with them, you can transfer disease and stuff. And a lot of the small natural ponds, that they do get built on, so that I understand 100% why they are protected. They're fantastic creatures.
Sure. Yeah, and it does make sense. What about catfish? You have different varieties of catfish out in the pond?
We don't. I've got one customer that's got a channel catfish, and I'm surprised that it lives outside. But obviously, that's one thing that I've learned from the ponds in Chicago. Some of them have catfish, but certainly we don't really have that many. There's a couple of guys that, I've kept Wales catfish before the licenses came out. They're the big European Wales catfish. And you need a license to keep those. We used to have them. I used to work on a fish farm, and we used to have them in the fishing lakes up to sort of like 90 pound. And I've travelled all over the world to go and catch the European Wales catfish. I went out to Kazakhstan in year 2000. Wow. That was a really great fishing expedition. Even on my holidays, I'm still in the water. Freshwater. That's where I am. That's where I want to be. The adventurer.
I'll tell you, if I had a choice to go to prison for illegal catfish or illegal newts, I would go to prison for catfish.
Yeah.
That would be my choice.
I know. Certainly, it's a case of 10 years ago they were smuggling a lot of catfish into the UK from France. There used to be some massive catfish in the French rivers, and they used to smuggle them into the UK. And always in the fishing press, we used to see of someone going to prison because they've been caught smuggling catfish into the UK. Because obviously, if you've got a fishing lake in the UK and you can advertise that you've got a big fish, then obviously you can demand a lot more money for people to come and fish your lake. It's all catch and release. Obviously, if I know catfish, and they're you eat them a lot, over in America, and but certainly, you don't have many catfish or bass or anything in the UK at all.
Yeah, very interesting. A lot of differences in how we keep our fish. Now, what about aquatic plants? I'm sure you've gotten a very good idea of what kind of plants we keep in our ponds out here, and what kind of plants you're keeping out in England. What are some of the big differences that you see in how we approach water gardening?
I think certainly it's a case of, because obviously the US or the States, it's a lot bigger, and you've got a lot of different zones. I've seen a lot more tropical, water lilies and lotuses and stuff like that when I've been out to Chicago. Where in the UK it's just so expensive to ship them in for a sort of like a 3-month or a 4-month window. I have seen them in the UK, but they're more for tropical aquariums or paludariums or stuff like that. So, I used to sell some, tropical King of the Blues and stuff like that. I used to, that's one of my favourite fragrant, water lilies. But certainly the hardy water lilies, we've got loads of hardy water lilies. It's the hybridizing of the hardy water lilies, but no lotus, no real tropical day blooming or night blooming tropical lilies. But we've got some great English native water plants. And obviously with the American, the American influence, there's a lot of names. Like I was saying to you before. The common names, it's very hard for me to I've got a rough idea of the common names, in America and in the UK. We've got, we never call typhus cattails. So, in America they call them cattails. In the UK we call them reed mace, or they're falsely named bulrushes. Where I obviously coming from a plant background, I call them typhus, typholaps or angustifolia. But certainly it's a case of, that was one thing I did pick up, when I was doing the plants, is what are cattails? Cattails, there's a lot of cattails. Oh, it's typhus. Okay, but they're the reed mace. And coontail is hornwort or ceratophyllum. It's an oxygenating plant. We would never. We've got obviously no raccoons in the UK, so I think that's where the name comes from. But there's lots of similarities. We had Chris and Diane Baker over from across the pond, a couple of weeks ago, when I did a little mini tour, and Diane was really impressed with my plants in my back garden. And she was saying, "Oh, you have the similar sort of stuff to us." And I said, "Yeah, it's only really the tropical stuff that we don't really have, because of the short season, and it's very hard to, you can't ship them in. Obviously, I think when you've got all the different zones, and it's just a case of the shipping is a lot easier in the States than flying it across or shipping it across the big pond. Like I say, lotus. I've only probably seen one or two lotuses in the UK. And they're all normally at botanical gardens. We've got a great, Kew Gardens is fantastic, and we've got some real nice. We've got the Amazonian water lilies and stuff. There's a real good collection, but from outside of the big botanical gardens, there's no real lotuses unless you've got a real dedicated lotus hobbyist that ships them in and keeps them in a conservatory. So, but certainly not outside. But yeah, it's lots of plants.
Yeah. We don't use a lot of the submerged aquatic plants. We're using mostly marginals. We don't do a lot of what you're referring to with coontail, those type of submerged aquatic weeds. I don't use a lot of that. I don't see a lot of that being used in ponds. It's still very popular in aquarium keeping, much more popular in aquarium keeping. But, as the weather starts turning, what are some of the recommendations that you give to people out there to prepare their plants for wintertime? What are some good tips that we can give to people out there?
Yeah, it's basically a case of it's all it's good housekeeping. So I call it the 3Ds. The dead, dying, and diseased. If you've got any yellowing on the plants, so now obviously this time of the year, the water lilies are starting to turn yellow. So, within the next few weeks, we'll cut all the lilies back. But certainly, anything yellow, the 3Ds, and that's why I always think, from a horticultural training, it's the dead, the dying, and the diseased. You just prune that out or get rid of that, as a matter of course, and then you can restart shaping the plants and stuff. But certainly, going on back to the submergence, I think a lot of them are there when you're competing with algae, when you haven't got other plants. So the submerged plants, this time of the year, then we're reducing the stock quite heavily because obviously in the winter they do start to rot back, and then they obviously add load to the system. Just dead, dying vegetation. So in a wildlife pond that there's no filtration, no pumps, we would actually cut the submerged weeds back and then put the tips back in because obviously you've got that growing point. They're continually growing. Some of the fastest plants on the planet are actually submerged water plants. They can grow 14 centimeters in a day easy, and that's I was saying, they're not bulbs that come up real quick and then die back down. They're continually growing. Obviously. It's basically the 3D. So with the marginals, cut them back just above the surface of the water. Now, if it's low, at the moment we haven't had a lot of rain in the UK, so some of the ponds are sort of a foot deep, a foot down, or 18 inches down. Where the rain hasn't topped them up. So I wouldn't cut them down to the water level now. But certainly, where the winter level is going to be. So, because a lot of the plants, if you cut them down too low, then they will drown. Their foliage will still act as straws, sucking down air or insulate the heart of the plant. So certainly the sort of like the deep water marginals, then cut them about an inch above the surface of the winter level of the water. But yeah, cutting everything off that's gone yellow. As a matter of course, in the next few weeks, we're going to be chopping all the water lilies back in all of the ponds. Some of them have still got flowers on, but to get around all the ponds that we go and see, it's like the pond that I was at yesterday. I was saying to the guys, it's a shame that we've got to take these. There's one or two flowers that are still holding on. But it's a case of we're there, so rather than coming back and just doing the water lily after, we do it when we're on site. So cutting everything back as a general housekeeping, because what you don't want to do is you don't want to have all that composting plant matter building up in the pond. So obviously with the deciduous trees around the ponds, again that's that's one of the big tasks that we do in the UK. You know, if people haven't got nets, you know, we haven't got many ponds with skimmers, so obviously there's no skimming action at all. So there's a lot of you know, leaves that are dropping in down to the bottom, and sometimes it's a case of, you know, some people say that it's good because obviously when they're composting, they are generating a little bit of heat. But again, you know, when you've got that lid on the top with the ice, it's not the cold that kills the fish; it's the gas that's building up from rotting vegetation. So, you know, in a sterile koi pond, when you've got no organic load, you know, they're a lot hardy, you know, in the winter because there's no organic load that's apart from a little bit of fish waste. You know, there's no plant matter that's rotting down, and it's the methane that's being produced by that rotting plant material. So in the wildlife ponds, you can have you know, oxygen problems even in the winter because of that methane. You know, can't get in out of a wildlife pond. So this is why we chop back a lot of the plants. You know, especially if there's a few fish in there. You know, obviously, you know, the gas will build up underneath. But again, we don't really tend to drill. I remember last year, or maybe even the year before, you're doing a winter video for your YouTube channel, and I picked up on drilling the ice rather than breaking the ice. You know, that's a big no-no. Certainly, drilling the ice is a good thing. Not that we had any ice or hardly any ice last year. You know, very, very thin cat ice. But this last year that we had a very mild winter, we didn't have any snow. You know, so, you know, not even a sprinkling. Where the year before we had quite a lot of snow and some deep frost. You know, and ice down to sort of a couple of inches. So I'm waiting for that deep freeze so then I can start drilling my holes because I haven't actually done it yet. So
something to look forward to. Now, do you add any fertilizer to the plants before they go dormant?
No, I tend to feed and repot all the water plants in the spring. The reason being is because sometimes, you know, that the aquatic fertilizers and stuff, unless the plants are just starting to grow, they can feed the water. So you know, you can have water quality issues. It all depends on the fertilizer that you're using, and that is a real popular thing with the water plants. You know, a lot of people plant water plants in you know, in really low nutrient, you know, even gravel sometimes. It all depends on what you're trying to achieve, whether you're trying to achieve show grade water plants or whether the water plants are in there, you know, because obviously you've got the decorative point and also you've got the nutrient. You know, you know, they actually remove a lot of toxins from the water as well, water plants. So, you know, they can take out toxins, metals, you know, lots of you know, even you know, pesticides and stuff. You know, it's great. But well, I've gone off on a tangent now. Where were we going? I can't remember where we were.
Well, we're talking about fertilizer, but let me ask you.
That's it. Fertilizer. Yeah. So it all depends on the fertilizer. You know, if you're using a pelleted fertilizer, you know, this time of the year you can fertilize, but if they're going back into them, they're not using the nutrients. So I would tend to fertilize the plants in the spring, and certainly I would never use a liquid fertilizer this time of the year because that's just going to you know, feed the single cell algae or green water, or you know, the very less, you know, the less complex plants. You know, the single cell algae is the most basic plant that there is. So you know, if you use a liquid plant fertilizer, unless you've got a lot of submerged weeds that are going to, you know, get that growth, you know, but they tend to be going back into a dormant stage and making, you know, a few of their, you know, the winter buds, you know, it's all going back into the rhizome of the lily and stuff like that. So I wouldn't tend to fertilise. I know a certain amount of people that repot the lilies and stuff this time of the year because you can do it. And it's certainly the cold temperatures you can, but you know, it's got to be very, very slow release. You know, otherwise if you've got If you're putting in, rotted horse manure or something in for the plants, hungry plants. That's another thing. We grow moisture-loving plants, and they're called bog plants, and they're just moisture-loving. Like the primulas and stuff. Where I know in the States they call vegetable filters bog filters, or what we would class as a wetland, or a vegetable filter, or an up bog filter or something you would call it. Where in the UK we class bog plants as moisture loving, like the primulas, the hostas, so they've just got the tips of the roots in the water. So it's and obviously a lot of those just trim the leaves, and they're going back. So like the gunneras, cutting those, the great big elephant. Is it called elephant ears? Gunnera.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great big lovely plant, and we just cover the crowns, and some of those can be absolutely massive. Yeah.
Well, those are some really great tips, and a really interesting conversation talking about how the differences between the American approach and English approach, and the similarities as well as to how we go about keeping ponds. I mean, really interesting stuff, Mark, and we're coming up on that time. It just flew by, but I want to thank you so much for calling in.
Crazy, isn't it?
Yeah. Thank you for calling into the show. Thank you for staying up so late. I know it's very late for you right now, but it was really a pleasure talking to you.
Book myself a bit of a lie-in tomorrow. I'm starting at about 9:30, 10 o'clock rather than my normal 6:30, 7. So I don't have to get up in 3 or 4 hours time. So I'll give myself a bit of a lie-in tomorrow.
Good planning. Well, thank you so much again for calling in. I look forward to seeing you hopefully someday over there, but I'm sure I'll see you coming up over here within the next year or so. And
we'll see each other in Carbo, won't we? We'll see each other in Carbo if that all goes on. I know what's going on over there at the moment.
Yeah,
it's terrible, but certainly hopefully in January we'll see each other in Carbo.
Let's hope so. But thank you so much for coming on. I hope you have a great rest of the evening, and thanks so much for your insight and your information to all the listeners out there. And I look forward to speaking with you again.
Thanks, Mike.